welcome back to another video. My name's Min and today I'm going to be making an elastic waist tiered skirt with inseam pockets. Now if you're here just to learn about how to do inseam pockets, all of that process is going to be like in the first part of making this skirt, so just keep watching from here and we will get to the inseam pocket part quickly. Now for the materials for this skirt, I'm using this linen gingham. It's navy and white gingham from the fabric store. This is a remnant that I picked up when we were in Adelaide earlier in the year, just before the Adelaide fabric store shut. And so I've got 1.9 meters of this fabric, but I think I'm going to only use just over a meter. So let's get started. So first I'm going to cut out the four basically rectangles that make up the main part of the skirt. The first rectangle I cut is going to be, I'm going to use the width of the fabric as the width of the first tier the whole way around. So I'm going to cut one rectangle that's going to be the length of the first tier, and then cut that rectangle in half to be the front and then the back of the first tier. So I'm not even like really measuring any specific length, but I'm thinking that I'm going to cut it about this long, maybe one more, and because it's got checks, I'm going to use the line of the checks to make sure I'm cutting it straight. So I'm just going to hope it's all pretty well straight and just go for it. So I think I'll cut along here as the first tier. Okay, so now that first tier is cut, I'm going to cut this piece of fabric in half to be the front and the back of my skirt. I'm not really using a pattern for this, because I've made a couple of tiered sort of gathered dresses and skirts before, but DIY Daisy has a really good tutorial on proportions and stuff for making a tiered sort of gathered elastic waist skirt. So I'll put that in the description box below, so check that out definitely for knowing sort of what pattern pieces to cut. Okay, so now I'm going to cut this piece in half, so I've got my front and my back. I've just measured and this seems to be half here, so again I'm going to use the check pattern to sort of make sure I'm cutting straight. Okay, that's my first two pattern pieces. Next, I'm going to be cutting the bottom tier. So for the first tier, I use sort of like the half of a length for the front, and then half of the width of the fabric for the front, half of the width of the fabric for the back. But for the bottom tier, I'm going to be using the full width of the fabric for the front and full width of fabric for the back, because you want your fabric for your tiers to be like roughly twice as wide. I mean, it doesn't really matter as long as it's wider, but yeah. I'm gonna guess the length for the bottom tier to be kind of similar to the top tier, but maybe just a little bit shorter. So I'm just gonna measure to see what my top tier was. Okay, so my top tier will come to about there. So I'm gonna go about here for my bottom tier. Again, sort of verge on the side of cutting it longer than you think rather than shorter, because you can always make it shorter by hemming it, but you cannot make it longer. Well, you can add another tier, but I don't want to do that. I just want to have two tiers. the exact same thing again to be the back piece of that bottom tier. So I'll just measure on here. I mean, I could probably count the checks. That's the way I could do it, but there we go. It's here. Just notch that so I know where I'm up to. And then cut along that line. This is a lot harder if you don't have a fabric that has checks, because you actually will have to measure rather than just using the pattern of the fabric to cut out. And this is definitely not like a super accurate way of doing it, but because it's a yarn dyed pattern, it's not a printed pattern, so I'm assuming that it's going to be pretty accurate to being straight. But yes, if you want to be really accurate about it, definitely measure. But as you may have picked up by now from watching some of my videos, I am not a particularly accurate sewist. I just like to get it done, vibe it out, and get it done quickly. A lot of my motivation to sew is because I'm excited about wearing the garment that I'm making. So I often want to get to the point of wearing it, sometimes to my detriment. Okay, I have those two matching pieces to be the front and back bottom tier, and so now it is time to cut out our pocket pattern. Okay, so for cutting out the pocket pieces, I am going to use the pocket pattern piece from the Demeter dress by Anna Allen. I'll link this pattern below, but like honestly, you can use whatever pattern piece you have from something that has inseam pockets, or you can easily draft your own. You want it to be like this kind of rough shape where it's got a straight edge with the seam allowance on it, for that's going to be going down the seam, and then kind of this sort of shape here. And so yeah, you just want to make sure you can obviously fit your hand very comfortably in it. I've made this pattern a couple of times, and so I know that I'm happy with this pattern piece, and you'll just want to cut 4 of those, so 2 pairs. So I'm going to be using my my rotary cutter to cut these out. Step is to attach the pocket bags to the side seams of the top tier of our skirt. And so what I've done is I've got this is either my front or my back top tier piece, and I've just measured on myself, and I think I'm going to want the pocket to start about this far down from the top of the pattern piece. Now, taking into account that this has to fold over to have the elastic casing in it, so once the elastic is in, it's probably going to be about that much shorter at the top. So I guessed that out, I sat that on my waist, and I marked just there where I think I want the top of the pocket to start. So I just cut a little notch there. And so what we do is we get one of our pocket bags, and with right sides together, we pin the pocket bag facing in, not out, right sides together, starting, I'm going about 1 centimetre in, because I think I'll do about a 1 centimetre seam allowance, and I'm just going to line up roughly 1 centimetre in with the top of that notch, and then just pin down the side seam. going to sew from about I'm doing a 1 centimeter seam allowance, so I'm going to sew from 1 centimeter in from this edge of the pocket bag down the side to 1 centimeter in from the end here, and then I'm going to do the same again on the other side of this pattern piece, and then I'm going to replicate the exact same thing again on the back pattern piece with the other pocket bag pair. All 4 pocket pieces sewn on to the edges of my front and back piece for the top tier, and so the stitching, it just goes along just the edge of the pocket bag there, and so now I'm going to go in with my overlocker and just finish each of those seams just for that section of side seam, because we'll come along and do the rest after we've sewn everything together. Okay, so I'm now going to press the pocket bag, the seams out, with the seam allowance facing the pocket bag. And then while I'm here at the iron, I'm just going to get my pins, because I think pinning the next part will be easier here at the iron with a flat surface rather than trying to do it on my lap at the sewing machine. Okay, so now I'm back with my pins, and now it's time to pin the side seams. So we want to do this right sides together. So I'm going to line up, actually I'll go this way, I'll line up the first edge there, and match this one on top. And then actually I'll bring you around so you can see what I'm doing. So the next edge is what we're going to do is we're going to sew the side seam down to where we started stitching this pocket bag just before, go around the pocket bag, back up to where that stitching ends from before, and then continue the side seam down to the end. So I'm just going to pin that on both sides, and then we're going back to the sewing machine to sew that. all pinned up, so back to the sewing machine. Back at the sewing machine, and we're just going to sew those seams that we just pinned. Alright, I've got one of these seams sewn, the other is still just pinned, but Wilbur has just woken up, so mum life means I think I will leave it there for today and I will pick this up again tomorrow. There's the next day and I'm going to continue sewing the other side seam for the top tier. To finish both of those seams on the overlocker and then go and press. Well, it's several days after I sewed that seam. You've just seen me finish it, but yes, life got in the way and I got one seam sewn the last day I was sewing, but anyway, here we are. I've now sewn and finished both the side seams, including the pocket bag for the top tier of the skirt. So now I'm just going to press those, and I figured that whilst I'm here at the ironing board I will also press the elastic casing top part of the skirt, and then so that I may as well do all of those sewing bits for the top part, and then all I have left to do is gather the bottom tier, attach it and hem it, put the elastic in, and then we're done. So yes, I am going to press these seams. This top tier and I have pockets. So yeah, just a inseam pocket there. Great. So because the pocket bag is made with the same fabric as the outer part of the skirt, and because it's patterned as well, like even if it sort of hangs open a little bit or you gaped in a bit, you can't really see it, it's pretty invisible. But also, like, pocket bags, if you wanted to make a bit of a statement with your pockets, is a good way of using up some fabric scraps, and then you can get a little pop of colour in the side there. But now I will iron the casing for the elastic waistband. So I'm going to start by folding over the top just probably just a little shy of a centimetre at the top. I'm going to get rid of my steam so I don't burn myself. Again, like, I am not measuring anything for this skirt. I'm all doing it, the whole thing just by eye. And that's partly because I gathered like a tiered elastic waist skirt is like probably one of the most forgiving things. Is like it's very hard to mess it up. As long as you get the amount of elastic right so that it actually fits around your waist, honestly there's not much that you can mess up in terms of proportions and stuff. So I'm just doing this by eye. Like I said, at about 1 centimetre. Okay, now that I have that raw edge folded over, I'm just going to fold it over again about 0.5 centimetre wider than my elastic. So my elastic here is 32 mil wide, and so I'll fold over the elastic casing so that it's about I mean, I guess it's probably going to be like roughly 37 mil, just enough to have the casing sort of, the elastic tucked away like pretty snugly, but like enough room that it's not going to be really super difficult to like thread through. So yeah, I'm going to go my only measurement that I'm doing is like kind of like based on the check pattern of this gingham, and I'm doing about 3 3/4 of a check as my width. I think that they're about 1 centimetre, these checks, roughly. But yeah, I'll just check that this can fit in. Yeah. So I've got probably like 3 mil clearance on either side of the elastic, and I think that that's probably about a good amount. I mean, you can use any width of elastic you want, just like how wide do you want your waistband. You could have a super wide elastic waistband if you want, or you could have a pretty narrow one. I wouldn't go too narrow because that's going to be kind of uncomfortable and it won't like sit super nicely. So I reckon about, yeah, probably like 2 to anything between like 2 and 4 centimeters is probably a pretty good width for a waistband elastic. Back to the sewing machine. And since that I just pressed the elastic casing, I'm just going to go around and sew that now. So from the wrong side, I'm just going to edge stitch the whole way around, but leaving probably like 10 centimeters open, close to one of the side seams, probably at the back. That's just where we'll insert our elastic later on. So that's the front. I'm going to leave actually inserting the elastic till the very end, just because it's going to be a lot easier to work with a flat fabric rather than a fabric that's bunching up because of elastic. So next step will be gathering the 2 pieces for the front and back of the bottom tier. Okay, so I'm just going to do some gathering stitches. If you've never gathered before, I did a whole video about adding a gathered skirt, which I'll link here. But basically you just sew 2 rows of like basting stitches, so the longest stitch length that your machine can go, which for me is 6 mils, and I like to just do 2 rows of gathering stitches. Some people like to do 3, which is probably going to give you a better result, but I don't really enjoy gathering, so I just like to get it done as quick. Hello, and apologies for the jump cut, but it appears that my memory card got full and I didn't realise, and so you've been transported forwards in time I am now unpicking all of my gathering stitches, having done all of the gathering process. So apologies if you are looking forward to watching me gather. I will link here the video I made about adding a gathered skirt to anything, and that's exactly the process that I have just done to do these gathers. I think last you saw I was just about to sew my gathering stitches, so I did those. Then I sewed the side seams together for the bottom tier before I then pulled all of the gathers along the gathering thread, and then spaced them all out and pinned it to the top tier, and then I just sewed it with a 1 centimeter seam allowance, and then I spent what feels like 1,000 years unpicking all of the gathering stitches, which coincidentally, if you have a faster method for unpicking gathering stitches, feel free to comment below, because my goodness, it's tedious, especially when it's quite a full skirt and it just feels like you're unpicking forever. So yes, here we are, jumped forward in time to now unpicking the gathering stitches. Next up, I'm going to be finishing the seam that I just sewed, attaching the 2 tiers together, and then we're going out to press, and then we're very, very close to finishing this skirt. To press the side seams of the second tier, because I haven't pressed them yet. I'm going to press the seam I've just sewed and finished, the one that joins the 2 tiers together, and I'll press it upwards, like towards the top, just because that's like the bulk of the gathers. Would be too much, I think, if I pressed it down. And then what I'll do is I will press the hem, and then we're so close to being done. I'm going to press up the hem about 2 centimeters, and then again probably another 3 centimeters. I like to press my hem before I've sewn it, because then I normally can just go and sew it without having to pin it, and then I don't have to press it after I've finished either. And because also, like, as you know, the hem's normally the last thing that you do. Not quite in this case, but it's so nice to just be able to quickly finish that hem without having to worry about pins or having to come back out to press it again. It's just ready to go. And a fabric like linen holds a press so well, and so there are some fabrics that wouldn't work with, something that doesn't hold a press quite as well. But man, linen is, I reckon, probably the best fabric for pressing, in my experience, I'd say. I love working with linen. It's definitely my favourite fabric to work with. Okay, that is all pressed. The one other thing I'm going to do while I'm still out here is I'm going to get my elastic cut for the waistband, because that's easier to do if I'm standing up. So I will go and get my elastic. Okay, here is my elastic. Like I said before, I'm using 32mm wide elastic, and I thought that this just looked like it would be a nice width for a waistband. I would go down as small as 2 centimeters, and I probably wouldn't go wider than, well, probably not much wider than this, probably no wider than 4. Now I'm just going to take off my belt so that I can get less bulk while I'm measuring my waistband. Okay, so I want, again, I'm not doing any measurements, I'm just doing it, it's all by vibes. So I probably feel like I want it to sit here, and I'm just going to do it until it feels like it would be a good tightness. I think that would feel pretty good. And then the one last check I like to do when I'm doing elastic waistbands is just to check that that size of elastic would fit over my bum. And now, mind you, I am also wearing jeans, but I think, yeah, that can just fit over my bum and with jeans. So I think that's going to be fine. So I'm just going to put my finger there to mark that. Okay, so that's how long my piece of elastic is. I'll add on probably about 2 centimeters for overlap, and I'll cut it there. Okay, now that piece is ready too. Back to the sewing machine to finish this off. Okay, first up, sewing the hem that we just pressed. And now time to insert the elastic in the waistband, and then we are done. So I've just put a safety pin on the end of my piece of elastic I cut just before, and now I've found the gap that I left in the elastic casing that I sewed before. I probably wanted to ideally leave a bit more of a gap than what I did, but this will be fine. And so I just insert the elastic in and thread it all the way through. So that's what the safety pin's there for, is to help sort of pull it through. When you're getting kind of close, like to, because obviously the piece of elastic is a lot shorter than the casing you're threading it through, and so I just hold this in my mouth, like I just hold it with my teeth, just to make sure it doesn't disappear into the casing while you're threading. So, elastic is in. You just want to make sure it hasn't twisted at all while you're threading. And so these ends need to join together like this. When I cut my piece of elastic, I allowed an additional 2 centimeters in length, so it can overlap, the elastic can overlap by 1 centimeter, so that is about there. And then I'm going to go in, I like to do a bit of a zigzag, so I'm going to do a pretty wide zigzag and kind of a short stitch. I'm going like half, like, oh sorry, I'm going like, yeah, I'll go like I'll go 1.5 for my stitch length, and I'm just going to stitch a zigzag over that overlap, up and down, up and down, up and down. Now, like, there's so many different ways that you can join elastic, but that's just what I like to do. It's easy, it's never broken on me, it seems nice and strong, and a zigzag is always good when you're dealing with anything that's got any stretch. Okay, so that is stitched together, so I'll just get all of the elastic in the casing, and now our last step is just to close up that gap that we left. So this is why one of the reasons I like to not have the casing width be like too much, like too close in size to the width of the elastic. You can see there I've almost got a whole centimetre of like ease, I guess you could say. And that is so that, yeah, it's easy to thread the elastic through, but then also this step is easy as well, and you can really get the elastic well out of the way. The elastic in the casing is like ending at about here, and this is where I have to stitch, so I'm absolutely not going to accidentally catch my elastic while I just quickly sew that bit closed. And we're done. And so that's how I make a simple elastic waist skirt with side seam pockets, and I think I'm going to get so much use out of this. It definitely is giving me peasant sort of vibes, but I really love that actually. And yeah, I think I'm going to be able to wear it heaps in summer, and also as a layering piece in winter as well. So yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!